And we are live here for our live painting Friday on the Frugal Crafter. I'm Lindsay and my friend Sarah is here.
Hi.
And Sarah will be moderating the chat. So if you have any questions for me as we go, just type in all caps and she can relay the questions to me. And I'll try to explain everything as we go. So hopefully everything will be very clear. We're going to be using, or I've actually already added some masking fluid to my picture. And I want to just go over a few tips on this. This is the Winsor & Newton colorless art masking fluid. I actually recommend getting one that's tinted just because it's easier to see when you have it on your paper. But if you went to my website, and the link is in the video description, you'll see that I put this sketch up for you, and everything in the pink is what you want to mask with your masking fluid. And I also linked to the photograph so you could look at that too while you're painting or adding your masking fluid so you can figure it out. So what I do is I'll use a brush, but I will load it up with dish soap before I dip it into the masking fluid, and actually pour a little bit out. And you can see my cap is broken here. I pour a little bit out onto my palette and I cap it up. I've had this since like, I don't know. I've probably had this bottle for 20 years. It's now like 16 bucks, and this was $10.49 back when I had it. But it still stays nice. It hasn't frozen or dried out. So you can keep it for a long time because you typically won't go through that much of it. And you can find this as well as all the other supplies I'm using at our sponsor, jerrysartorama.com. I have everything linked in the video description so you can find it easily. And they're a wonderful sponsor, and I thank them for their support. So what I've done already is added masking fluid. You're not going to be able to see it too well on my paper because it'll kind of just show up as a little shiny. If I tip my paper to the light, you might be able to see it's kind of got a little bit of a yellowish tinge to it, but it's just masking off some flowers in the foreground. And these are the colors we're going to be using. We're using two more than normal. We're using 8 colors in total. We're going to use rose as our cool red. This is a quinacridone red color. Just look for PV19 on one of your paints. As long as it is more kind of red than purple, you should be all right. Burnt sienna. We're going to use for our yellows, lemon yellow and yellow ochre. Actually, this is permanent yellow, but you can use lemon yellow or cad yellow light if you don't have permanent yellow. These are all in the Turner line. We're going to use phthalo blue. You can use Prussian blue if you don't have phthalo. You can also use peacock blue. And we're going to use ultramarine blue. And if you don't have ultramarine, if you have a cobalt that has a very similar hue, you can use that. Sometimes your cobalt, like this is a cobalt pigment here, and it looks very turquoise. You just kind of go by your eyes and what your eyes see. I also added phthalo green, and I already told you the turquoise there, just because we're using so many different blues that I think we need a little variety. And I was going to leave out the turquoise, but the intensity of these colors is so high, I needed that to temper it a little bit. All right, we're going to start off by wetting our sky, and I thought I would try this brush that I haven't used before, but I bought on sale. This is called a Modeler, and it's a Princeton Neptune, and I didn't link it up, but Jerry's does carry it. It's just a synthetic kind of squirrel brush, kind of like the Mimics. They're very similar to the Mimics, but I found these before I learned about the Mimics. So this is a little bit more expensive. I like it because it had a short handle, and I thought I could put it in my travel set. So I'm just wetting the sky here. And then I am going to grab, this is, you can use whatever size is comfortable for you. This is a number 12 round. And I am going to take, I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue. And I'm going to add a little bit of turquoise to it, just to kind of give me a nice neutral, softer blue. And I'm going to start it up here in this corner. And I like ultramarine because it granulates really pretty. It just gives a nice texture. And the sky could be a little bit flat sometimes without it. We're going to do a little lifting, so you'll want to have a tissue or a paper towel handy. And the paint's only going to go where the paper is wet, so don't worry about the mountains or any other portions of your painting right now. I think I want a little more color. So whenever I want to add more color, what I'm going to do is add it to the top because I want it a little bit darker up there. And I'm going to tip it. And then I'll just keep working it in. Ultramarine is also a very liftable color, so I like to use that when I know I'm going to be lifting clouds out of the sky.
Gracie Shack, I have my first art class at my local nursing home, and I'll be teaching art. Do you have any tips for me as being new to teaching? Just hugs to you, Lindsay, and your support means so much.
I would say have fun. That's my biggest tip, and make sure your students have fun. Crumple up a paper towel and just kind of press. Just blot. You don't want to rub, but if you want more color to come up, press harder. And we're just going to bring out kind of like it's a big puffy cumulus cloud there. I'm following the reference photo fairly accurately, so you can look at that if you get stuck. Now I've got a little puddle up there, so what I'm going to do so that it doesn't cause me trouble is I'm just going to kind of run my towel right against the edge there where that puddle is so that it can go away without, because it will backwash. I am adding a little bit more cloud area up here because it looks a little funny not to have anything else right there. And for this picture, that's all we're going to need for our clouds. They're pretty far away, and we don't need to do too much to them. Now I'm going to leave this center area here alone, and I'm going to jump down to the water. And again, we're going to start by wetting the water, and you can use whatever brush you want to do for that. I am just going to use this same one I painted the sky with. Oh, if you're looking for more artistic inspiration, I wanted to let you know that craftsy.com has all of their classes 50% off this weekend. It's their huge Labor Day sale, and it's probably the biggest sale of the year. If not the biggest, it is probably the next to the biggest. And I've got a link in the video description. If you do click through that link and you purchase any classes, it directly helps my channel, and I do appreciate it. They have more than painting. They've got knitting and paper crafting, cooking, cake decorating, all that stuff. So I like to watch them when I'm on the treadmill. It makes the time go faster, and then I can apply my techniques next time I'm sitting down to paint. So if you had some classes on your wish list, now's a good time to pick them up. Oh, you'll notice I have 2 buckets of water here. I have one for cleaning my brush, the dirty water, then I dip into the clean water when I need fresh water for my painting. So that's why I have 2.
Kevin Crespo, Lindsay, what affordable watercolor markers do you recommend?
Honestly, with watercolor markers, if you want your watercolor work that you're doing with them to be permanent, I would use the Winsor & Newton watercolor markers only. I have used I also like the Zig Real, like clean color brush pens, but if you play your sales right and you kind of keep your eyes open for a good deal on the Winsor & Newton ones, I think you could still get them for about the same price and they're not going to fade on you. So that would be my recommendation. I got mine at Jerry's when they first came out and paid like $2.69 per marker, because they had, usually when stuff is new, it comes out at a better sale. So you just kind of keep your eyes open. I'm going right in with some phthalo blue. It's super vivid, but we want our water. The water in this photo is just amazingly bright. So I wanted to capture that. That's why I have so many different shades of blue here, because there's so many shades of blue in the water. Now I'm going to take some of that blue and I'm going to add a touch of burnt sienna and a touch of the rose red, the quinacridone rose here, just a little bit there. And see, that wants to make it purple. Not a super intense purple because the phthalo blue leans more towards green. And then I can grab a little bit of the burnt sienna there. Really gray it down. I'm going to take a little bit more of that blue though. I want a really deep transparent blue, and that's going to go in here. We're working on wet paper, so it is going to stay blendy for us, so that's what we want. Grab some more of this darker color and go right along here, right along the shoreline.
Katie Hansen, do you have a heron or gulls watercolor tutorial?
No, I don't actually.
Add it to the list on the blog.
Yep, I have a list on my blog. You can add it on there.
Sea Life Crafts, of all the new watercolors you have been trying, which is your favorite?
M. Graham is not a new one, but that's kind of always what I kind of benchmark everything else to. I like the Cores. I like Daniel Smith. They're both quite different because the Cores are much, they just seem like a lot more transparent for some reason. They a little goes a long way. I like that. I just like the vibrancy of those colors. I'm gonna grab a little phthalo green. Boy, there's so many good ones. I'd have to say probably Daniel Smith and the Cores, other than M. Graham, are like my current ones I'm probably the most impressed with. I'm going in with this. This is Phthalo Green here.
Ally Javier, what type of brush do you recommend? Synthetic, mixed, or natural hair brushes?
I recommend a synthetic that's mimicking the natural hair personally. But a lot of people like the blends because you get the snap of a synthetic, but you get the absorbency of the natural. I'm going in with that turquoise in here where I need a little bit lighter of color. The turquoise is a really great color to temper. So if you've got an area where you think it's a little too bold, you can counterbalance that with the turquoise. I'm putting some down here because it's going to reflect the sky, and I want that that lighter blue down here. And so we don't have to worry about any of our flowers because we've already masked them off. And I had somebody email me or leave a comment last night about masking fluid issues. And there's a couple tips here. When, like, I'm not going to use my heat tool on this painting today because it can cook the masking fluid into my paper.
Ooh.
You also don't want to leave it on indefinitely. I've been all right leaving it on my painting for about a week, but you don't want to let it go more than 2 weeks on your paper. Some people say remove it that same day. I don't think that is necessary, but you definitely don't want to leave it on for a long period of time. I feel like I need to make that a little higher up here. There we go. And I am going to add a little bit of yellow ochre in here so it kind of looks like you can see some of the sand or dirt at the bottom of the water. I'm going to put it right into the green areas. I think it's going to add some nice depth. Wiping up my, and I've already managed to dirty both my clean and dirty. Don't do that, guys, at home. Try to remember what side's dirty and what side's clean.
Colby Grant. Hi, Lindsay. Do you have any recommendations for a good waterproof pen?
If you just want like the 1 millimeter tip, I would just get an ultra fine point Sharpie. Other than that, I really like the microns. They're more expensive. Or get a fountain pen with waterproof ink. Those are really fun. Or even a dip pen with waterproof ink. Now, there will be some reflections of our clouds in the water. So what you can do for that is just take your paper towel and blot a little bit. They're not going to be as bold. Just try to mirror what you've done up there. And when in doubt, leave it out. If that freaks you out and you can't figure it out, then just leave it be. And then, well, I actually could use a heat gun up here because there's no masking fluid up there. So I'm going to make that dry a little faster. So if we have any other questions, go ahead and give them to me.
Could we use a white pencil to mask the white parts?
You could use a white pencil. However, you're not going to be able to add color on top of it. So if you do not have masking fluid, don't worry. You can go over it with colored pencils later, right on top.
And Diana Trout would like to see the reference photo again.
See, I'm not exactly 100% sure if I'm allowed to show the reference photo, but you can click through in the video description. There is a link to it. I have permission to use it to paint from, and I think I did. It did appear in my Instagram photo, kind of in the background. But yeah, there's a link to it that way you can pull it up nice and big on your computer. I am just putting, I notice I have a little bit of a puddle here, so I'm just putting in my brush, letting it drink up any excess moisture. So hopefully we don't end up with a hard line in there. I think that's fine. Okay, so now what we're going to do is a little bit of shadow painting. So I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, and I'm going to mix up a nice dark color. I'm going to start off with a nice gray base. I'm going to use ultramarine blue and burnt sienna to make myself almost a black. You see how those two colors negate each other really well. More ultramarine. And then I'm going to add some phthalo blue in it because I need that cool green bias for my color. Get a nice intense color there. It looks a little too green to me, so I'm going to go in a little more ultramarine.
Jose Lopez. Hi, Lindsay. How is the Marie's palette with the bottle caps holding up? Love the idea so much.
Thanks. Well, my daughter used it up, so it did hold up fine. You do need to add like a little bit of honey or glycerin to that because it shrinks up quite a bit as it dries because of the water content and the filler content. But yeah, it was fine. I probably would recommend it, or if I did it again, I would use plastic water bottle caps and put magnets on them, or I would spray paint the bottle caps with like a white enamel spray paint, just the chippy stuff from Walmart, and that would just keep it from rusting. It didn't rust on me, but I think it would eventually. So what I'm going to do here is paint all of the shadows, and I don't have to worry about it being too intense because we're going to wash over this. So just kind of go in there. Use the edge of your brush. Look at the cool like textures you can get just by using the edge of your brush sometimes. And just be careful not to paint over the trees that you have marked off on your painting. If you need the pattern, it's on my website. Link is in the description. This photo was taken in Italy. And you can find this on Paint My Photo. I really love that website for reference photos. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Sea Life Crafts. I watched Rich's video on tinted watercolor paper. Lindsay, what are your thoughts on tinted colored watercolor paper? Do you have any experience using it?
I have used it when it first came out. It was really popular. Well, it was somewhat popular, but you don't really see it around that much anymore. I personally don't care for it because of the transparency of watercolor. I would use it for like pastels because it's opaque, but I like my colors to be really vivid. So for me, it just doesn't work with my technique. You could always tint your paper too with like an ink, mix ink with water and tint it and then stretch it so it doesn't buckle if you wanted that look. But I just feel like it's not very versatile because you're stuck with that color. I use tinted pastel paper though and tinted drawing paper, and I love those, but the watercolor paper gets a miss for me. I don't really care for it.
Janine Elise Pike. Hi, Lindsay and Sarah. I bought a bottle of Jackson's Fluid Matte Medium. Is there a maximum amount I can add to my acrylics before causing problems?
No, because that's basically the binder from acrylic paint without the color in it. So it won't cause your paints to come unadhered or anything. So you're good. You can thin it down as much as you want with that. With water, you need to limit it to no more than 30% because at that point you start to weaken the bond and your paint will no longer stick to canvas or wood. It'll only stick to like absorbent surfaces. It essentially becomes kind of like a watercolor in its bonding strength at that point.
Kim Ryan, are you still going to do a tutorial on, whoops, extra chat bumped up. Are you still going to do a tutorial on the orange leaf from your vacation?
Yes. I have not got that far yet, but I will. Story of my life.
You know. Lisa Stamen, Lindsay, do you prefer bright white or natural white paper color?
Well, honestly, I usually get the natural. I have used the bright white before. It's nice. I've used the Arches bright white. I kind of worry because it has those brighteners in it. I don't know what they are, if there's like a bleach in it or something. So I guess I was a little cautious about using them at all just because I figured it probably had something in there that might not stand the test of time. I'm a bit of a Luddite, I guess, on that. Usually I'm charging into the next new thing, but for some reason with that, I think probably because I was buying some large packs and I was like, oh, I don't want to take a chance on, 50 sheets of something that might not be that great. I mean, I wouldn't think the Arches would make it if it wasn't going to last, but you never know. Companies will make whatever people will buy, and that's the truth.
That is the truth.
I want things to shift a little more violet over here, so I'm going to add a little bit of the rose into that mix. Not a lot, just a little bit, so it's less green, more violet. And this is more shadowy over here, less defined, so I'm letting those colors kind of mingle.
Sakthi Sangha, are the St. Petersburg Yarka White Night watercolors good?
I think they are. I haven't done any light fast tests on them. The manufacturer says light fastness is good. I always kind of take that with a grain of salt, just because without an actual rating on there by the ASTM, I'm a little leery, but they're vibrant. They're wonderful to work with. They have good flow. So I don't have, I have no qualms with that brand at all. Just, you know, always, it's always a good idea to do your own light fast testing, just for your own peace of mind about how a color is going to fade or perform over time. But as far as painting with them, they're lovely to paint with. I'm going in with a lighter color here. I just added some water and I'm just filling in a little bit. Trying to find all the different shades of color I can muster in here.
Carpe Diem 9639. Do you ever use white? If it's useless, I'll eliminate it from my palette. Thanks.
I don't often use it, but don't get rid of it, because sometimes, like say you didn't have masking fluid and you're painting along with me and we get to the stage where we're doing these flowers. If you didn't have masking fluid to mask it at the beginning, you can mix white with your paint. It's also called gouache or body color, and you could get a very similar result that way. So I wouldn't get rid of it. I have used the white like on old, like paintings that didn't turn out very well. Sometimes I'll take the white and even the blacks, because I use black even less frequently, and I will just squirt some onto my paper and use a brayer to brayer over it and cover up my yucky painting, and then I'll do a pastel on top of it. So think of it as an opacifier, something to make your paint opaque, and you know, maybe do some experimenting with gouache, maybe use black paper and just do white on it, or use gray paper and do or even cardboard or something. I wouldn't throw it away because you can always practice with it. I wouldn't put it on your palette though, because if you do use it, you're probably going to want to squirt it straight out of the tube. Oh, that's way too bright.
Janine Elise Pike. On the fluid medium bottle, it says, don't use as a final varnish. Why is this? Because
it's the same material that you've been using in your paints. So if you use it as a final varnish and sometime down the road they need to remove that, like to clean it, or because it's yellowed, then it's going to also dissolve your painting. Archivists will use solvents that are appropriate for what they're trying to remove. So you want to have isolated layers between your painting and your varnish. That way when they can remove a varnish without disturbing what you have going on underneath.
Mo M. The paint in your palette looks well used, but your palette looks brand new. How come?
I clean my palette when I'm done painting. I'm not like a great housekeeper or anything, but that's something I always do. And it kind of drives me, I mean, it doesn't really drive me bananas because I don't have to deal with the mess. But when people do like a haul or they're showing their supplies and they open up their palettes and it's got like all this dried paint on it, I'm like, how can you even mix colors? Because you're not, because I pick like 5 colors to work with usually. And if I have these 20 other colors on my palette from another painting, I don't want that getting into my color by mistake. So so I just spray it with water and wipe it off after each session. So there's a little tip for you.
Kate Spider, what is the difference between gouache, watercolor, and acrylics?
Well, acrylic, watercolor and gouache have the same binder, but gouache is opaque. Acrylics use an acrylic polymer for a binder versus watercolors that use gum arabic or aquazol. Watercolors and gouache can be reactivated after they dry, and acrylics cannot. I got some yellow ochre here, and I'm going to put some along the shoreline over here. Just bringing it across. This is kind of the areas where there'll be peaks of sunshine. If you're looking at the reference photo on your screen, you'll see what I mean. And I also want to throw a little bit of that. There's like a little hill over here that I want to represent. And then I'm going to mix up a very kind of sappy green. So I made a little chart here. So if I did phthalo blue plus permanent yellow, I get this color, which is a little too bold. But then if I add yellow ochre to it, it really turns into that richer, more natural sap green. So that's what I'm going to do. I've got some phthalo green there already. So I'm just going to grab some permanent yellow and grab some yellow ochre. That's a pretty color there. And I'm going to just throw some of this there next to my wet paint and just kind of let it flow in.
Johann Gockel, which blue is the most versatile?
I think it's good to have a few different ones, but ultramarine blue is my most versatile blue. Now, in the reference photo I'm looking at, there's a lot of dark areas, so I'm actually brightening up some areas that are very dark just to add visual quality that I want to the painting. So that's why you might see some things a little bit different in my painting than the reference photo. Clean my light. There we go. I'm going to get a little burnt sienna here too. Add some of that into wet yellow ochre along the shore a little bit.
Julie Crabtree, I love Friday tutorials. Really look forward to them. Thanks, Lindsay and Sarah.
Oh, you're welcome. That's nice.
Yeah.
I look forward to Friday too. This is the fun stuff. Luckily, Jerry's isn't like really, they're just so awesome. They're like, oh yeah, paint whatever you want, Lindsay. Use the supplies that we carry, you know, which is pretty much everything because they're Jerry's and they're awesome. And so it's just like, I'm not like stressed out about anything.
It's the relaxing part of your week.
It is. It is.
Dawn Anderson. Hey, Lindsay, have you taken the Ann Mason class on painting fruit yet? And did you find it helpful?
I've started it, and yes, and it's 50% off at Craftsy right now. So if you're on the fence,
want to take a fruit painting class?
Well, the thing is, Anna Mason's technique is very different from mine, and it wouldn't necessarily be a technique that I would be that interested in, but I took some of her techniques and applied them to how I paint. We paint very differently. And I found it very useful just to kind of see another option. And I think that's very important to learn from different teachers, because you're going to pick something you like that I do. Maybe it's a background wash, but you're going to like something that Anna does, probably like her detail work with a tiny brush. You can pick and choose the stuff you like. It's not like religion. You can pick and choose, what you like from this one, what you like from that one, and do your own thing. So that's why I like it. So I'm going in with this lighter color. I just added a little more yellow ochre to that green that I mixed. I'm just doing some treetops with the edge of a 1-inch flat. Actually, it's maybe 3/4. Oh, it says number 20. I think it's probably a 3/4 in there.
Maxine Perry, how do you do your own light fast test? Put painting in the sun for how long?
The only way to get an actual true light fast test is with a machine called a photometer, or photometer. But what I do is I will take two colors, one I know to be extremely light fast and one I know to be extremely fugitive, and I will swatch those out on a piece of paper, like a watercolor paper. Then I will swatch out all the colors from a new set that I want to test. Then I cut that paper down the middle. I put one in my swatch binder and tape one to the window. And since I live in Maine, our light, everybody, wherever you live, your light's going to be a little different. So by doing that, I can see at what point alizarin the regular alizarin crimson fades, and I can see, if my ultramarine blue hasn't faded, my alizarin crimson is bleached out to white, and then I can kind of determine how light fast the colors are from that set, whether they faded with the alizarin crimson or if they're still holding true with the ultramarine. And then I compare it to my original colors that I have in the swatch book that haven't been touched by light, and I kind of make my assumptions that way. It's not it's pretty scientific, but it's not like you could make the ASTM would use a photometer, or any company doing like an actual scientific test would use one of those machines. But it gives me the idea that I know how long it's going to take for this to fade comparatively with my other brands. So, you know, I'd take something I know is like an excellent light fast rated paint, and I just swatch it out with something I know that is of terrible light fast paint and will fade, and then I can determine what colors and the new set, does that make sense, has faded versus like just by seeing if the other ones that I know to fade will fade and the ones that haven't.
Well, and don't a lot of companies won't they put on their tubes or palettes like how light fast? Don't some of them do that too?
Yes.
So if you don't want to do the test, you can always look up. Doesn't Rich have a thing on light fast? He's here.
Oh,
so
good. Hi, Rich.
He can throw in his 5 cents. It's probably more like 10 cents, actually.
Oh, sure. He'll have a novel to say about the subject. But handprint.com has a really great information. It can be a little overwhelming and mind-boggling, all the stuff they have on their website. But I think, like, if I take I have some PR83, which is the old alizarin crimson, which is completely fugitive, and that's kind of what that's kind of like the low end of what ASTM, I think, considers artist quality. They consider that fugitive. They don't consider that, they don't think it's suitable for artist work. If I can swatch that out on the same paper as I swatch out like an ultramarine blue and a burnt sienna, and then all the colors from a new questionable paint range I'm using, and if I see that the alizarin crimson is bleached out to white, but none of the other colors have even moved, then I know that I probably have decent colors. I could leave it long enough that my ultramarine actually starts to lighten, then I could kind of determine at what level those colors would be equivalent to. And you have to do that if your paint doesn't have those ratings. Not all paints will have those ratings, and sometimes you might not trust the ratings for whatever reason, because you know, you're asking the inmates to police themselves. I mean, you gotta take some things with a grain of salt if it's not done by an independent testing company. Mixing up some of my dark shadow, the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, and that's gonna go in on some of these trees too.
Shreya T, what cheap palettes do you recommend?
Well, for a travel palette, actually, you can't really go wrong with buying the Prima, the Prima tins, because they're about the same price as like a palette with no paint in them, and they actually have some fairly decent paint. I would recommend this palette here is a Zoltan Zabo palette. I think it's probably about $16, and it's like a studio palette. You wouldn't take this out traveling. And I also like the John Pike palette, which is, again, it's bigger than this. It's like 12 by 16, and it's made with a really durable plastic. And that, again, is a palette that you keep in your studio because it's just a little too cumbersome and big to take out painting in the field. If you're talking about paints, there's so many good paints to choose. If you're looking for like paints in a palette, Lucas Studio makes the 1862 Aquarelle paints, and those come in a little metal tin, and you could actually pop out the little pan holder and stick in more paints if you wanted to, but that comes with 12 colors that are pretty versatile. They also have a studio line that is very affordable, and actually I find the colors to be quite comparable, and it's only like $11 on Jerry's, so that's also a really good option for a travel palette. I find they kind of want to jump around on me, so you probably will want to put a little tape underneath them just to kind of stick the pans in the little squares, or you could pop the pans out and you could put other colors in there if you want to.
Carpe Diem 9639, what do you do with all your artwork? Do you sell or collect them?
I sell it. I have a little shop that I rent, and she
gives some out as presents too. I have a few pieces in my house that she's given me for gifts.
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the last 2 live stream paintings have sold, so that's kind of funny. Or actually, it was one from a review and one from the last live stream. Now, sometimes people email me and they want to buy them, and if not, I just stick them in my shop or give them as Christmas presents. I used to call them the starving artists Christmas gifts.
Yeah, but I have all the artwork you've ever given me. It always gets hung up wherever I move.
Aww.
And the birch tree one, the oil one that you gave me, I always get compliments on that. Like, where'd you get that? I'm like, I painted it. It was a gift.
Oh, I forgot about that. I love that one. That was so fun.
Yeah,
I did a lot of knife painting on that.
Yep.
That was a lot of fun to paint. Forgot about that. I always forget about them because I never keep them for very long.
Yeah. Well, when you paint all the time too.
Yeah. do something with them.
Shreya T, is the Koi Pocket Field Watercolor set reliable?
I don't know. I have not done a light fast test on it. I enjoy painting with it very much. But that stuff kind of goes in my my sketchbook, so I'm not too concerned with the light fastness on that. I'm going to add some shadows in the water here. As far as like painting pleasure, it is lovely. I would say they're a little bit on the chalky side, not terrible. They're more opaque than like your Cotman. Tinting strength is good though. They're very bright. Honestly, I think if you're in that ballpark, that that you're going to spend about that much, I think I would go with either the Lucas Studio or the Winsor Newton Cotman.
1991 Shuby, do you ever get stumped over a new painting, and how do you overcome the fear of a blank paper?
I usually don't get stumped. I'm usually kind of I paint a lot and a lot. Oh, for you know what I do? I do a little swatch of my colors. I figure out what colors I'm going to use. That's how I kind of break myself in. I don't even think about it as being stumped anymore. I just think of it, this is a great way to save some time when I'm getting ready to paint. But sometimes if I'm really stumped, I will do something completely different. I will maybe pick up a different project, like maybe pick up my knitting or crochet, or do some card making, do something different just to kind of break myself out of the rut. I'm just doing my, kind of doing some reflections and glazing on the water to deepen it. Make sure you have a soft brush to do this, or you're going to lift up the paint underneath. So I'm just kind of like looking at my mountain up there and some of these shapes in there.
Kim Ryan, are there any varnishes or top coats or watercolor that would stop the fugitive color from fading?
Framing it under glass honestly does a real good job. And you can even use a UV glass if you're really concerned that you've got some color that is a little less than desirable. That's how they do a lot of those. The light fast tests, I believe, are done framed under glass. So to show you, you know, kind of what's expected. Nobody's expecting watercolors to stay vibrant if you don't treat them properly. But you could use some UV glass. I'm not a big fan of the sprays. I'm afraid that the sprays may end up degrading your paper. That's why one of the reasons I don't use fixatives, they change the color and they can degrade the paper. Because it's an adhesive. I think anytime you're getting some sort of adhesive chemical in there, it's more likely to do harm than good. When I have to reframe something for somebody, it's always the adhesive that's been used that's damaging more than anything else. I'm going to do a little bit of that turquoise color. When you're looking at a palette, we were talking about palettes a few minutes ago. Something you might want to consider is a palette, and I'll show you my other one just because I like this just because I can kind of mix and keep everything right there and keep it on screen. But if it wasn't for doing tutorials and wanting you guys to see what I'm mixing, this is what I prefer. I'm just going to show you over here. This is a Jones palette. I like it because it has 32 wells. Honestly, I prefer the Pike palette because the quality of plastic is better and it's about the same price. But what you have here is a huge mixing. I kept my M grams in this little, I mean my Mission Gold in this because it actually fit in the middle of my palette. But you have all this space in the middle to mix in, and you can arrange your colors in a way that makes sense for you. In my case, I have them in rainbow order, except for a couple. And I realized when I was swatching these out the other day that I actually had a few that were not M grams in here when I got all my tubes out and stuff. And I remembered that these two are Maramy blue colors, and I've got, I think this one might be a Maramy blue color here too as well, because I didn't have tubes for everything. I've used some of them up, but I like having my colors here in this big mixing area. And I mean, you could even put your jars of water in here if you want to, if you don't have as much space on your table. But it's really great to have a big mixing area because then you're going to have fresher colors. So that's what I'd recommend for at-home use over what I'm using here. And I'm just using that because it's convenient for me to teach so you can see what I'm doing. And that's the only reason. It's not a bad palette, but I find that like I have to wipe out the wells a lot to have all the mixing space. Now you could use the lid. The lid is right here. I could put the lid out of sight and use that, but that takes up more space, and I think just having this one thing out would. You know, but it's up to you. I just want to, if you're in the market, I want you to see all the options you have out there before you decide for a permanent palette. All right, I'm going to let this part dry, and I'm going to come over here and work on the rocks a bit. And I'm going to, again, do the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna gray. And I think I can mix it over here. See, I'm running out of space already. Mix it right up here. And since, you know, I use all these colors, but not all together. That's when your painting starts to look a little amateurish. It's because you're using too many colors and you're not mixing enough. So that's why I clean my palette after I'm done painting, because I use these 8 colors. I'm not going to use these 8 colors the next time. I'm going to use a different 5 colors. So I don't want to have these oddballs getting in the way of what I'm painting next. So we're going to want some contrast here because we have masking fluid we're going to remove. So I want some nice dark grays. And I'm just kind of putting choppy strokes in there. And we'll glaze on some more darks too, so don't worry about that. I think I might even put a little green in there too to maybe suggest some moss or some grasses. I don't want a super crazy looking green. I want to have something that looks a little natural, so I'll take some yellow ochre and some of the phthalo green. Maybe a little bit of lemon yellow, or not lemon yellow, permanent yellow. Really like that color. Just throw it in a little bit here and there. Now, the nice thing about the mix that I'm doing here is that it's going to dry with a lot of texture and granulation because of the yellow ochre that because of the ultramarine blue that I used, and that will have that kind of rocky feel to it. So I'm going to let that dry, and I think I'm going to work in this mid area a little bit. In fact, I think I want to lighten up a little bit in the mountains because I feel like that there's too much of the same value there, and I don't like that. So I'm going to grab a stiffer brush, and this is what I've been using for lifting. I kind of am going to keep it for watercolor now because I have used it enough for lifting that I have frayed the tips, and this is a Simply Simmons size 8 synthetic, so it's not as rough as like a hog hair brush or a stencil brush, so it's not going to damage my paper if I need to do a wash on top, but it will allow me to lift off some of this mountainy color. So that's what I want to do. And here I just want to kind of scrub, maybe make another layer of mountains or something. I feel like there's not enough contrast between the trees in my mountain, and it's all kind of, it's pushing everything too far together in the middle. I need to have that sense of depth in there.
Mo M, I tried my first watercolor from your tutorial on a birch tree scene, but on cheap sketch paper. Is there any way to flatten the buckled paper?
Yeah, you could put it between a couple pieces of copy paper and iron it.
Ava Clendenning, what watercolor brushes do you think are best?
Depends on how you like to paint. If you have a problem with your colors being too light or you're using predominantly student grade colors, you'll probably prefer to use a synthetic brush that's got a little bit more snap to it because it will be easier to get the colors out of your pans. I would recommend Aqualon or Majestic by Royal Magnical or Ebony Splendor by Creative Mark. It's nice to get ones that have a beveled edge. None of these have beveled edges. Usually your natural bristles don't unless they're a bigger one, but I'll show you here something with a scraper end because that is very useful when you're painting, to have that for like squeegeeing out really light areas like tree trunks and things like that, or scribing in darker passages. So I recommend that. But there's so many good affordable brushes nowadays that I would pick up a few of different brands and see what you like the best. I would pick up different sizes though, just so that you have a variety while you're experimenting. And then when you find something you love, start building your collection. You don't need a lot of brushes to watercolor paint. You only need a couple. So, you know, build your collection slow, learn how to use the brushes that you have.
Shreya T, where do you buy your half pans?
I just got mine in the mail because they've been out of stock. Almost every American supplier, they're out of stock. So I just got a bunch from Amazon through Jackson's Art Supplies, which is a British company, and they had them. There's also another place called Half Pan PH from the Philippines. They do ship worldwide. I've never ordered from them. I don't know anyone that's ordered from them, but I follow them on Instagram because they have a nice Instagram account. But they seem to have fairly reasonable prices too. But man, they're so much more expensive than they ought to be. They're just little, do you know what they are? Little half pans. They're just little squares of plastic. You're probably better off to just buy some cheap paint and pop out the pans. Sometimes, I mean, I don't understand what the problem is, why you can't get those very easily these days. All right, I wanted some like rocks down here, so I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. I think I'll go to this number 4 round. And I'm going to go with my nice dark mix. I think I'm going to mix a little bit more color in there, though, because it's a little too watery. And I'll be using this on the rocks, too, so it's not going to go to waste. There, that's nice and dark. I'm going to paint the shadows on for some rocks and kind of add a little texture down here.
Allie Javier, which colors would you recommend for a beginner?
I would recommend, and actually there's a little set that's just perfect if you're learning color theory, and it's by Daniel Smith, and it's the Essential set. It's about $30, but it's got 6 tubes, and it has a split primary palette. So basically, it's got a warm and a cool version of each of your primary colors, and from that you can mix a ton of colors. In fact, let me show you really quick what you can mix from that, because I have my little swatch book, and I've got a video coming up on my swatch book here because I think it's pretty useful. But this is the that's not it. Right here. So the colors that you would get would be your cool blue, that's a phthalo, like we've been using, an ultramarine. You got a quin rose, we use that today, and a pyrrole scarlet. And then you've got a lemon yellow or Hansa yellow light, and you've got a new gamboge. So you've got 2 of each. So you can mix all these colors just from those, and actually even more. These are just your 2 color mixes. Then you can do like 3 color mixes, make grays, neutrals. And it's just a really great way to learn. And there's a class called Luminous Color Mixing at Craftsy, which really goes in depth on that. I do have a free video on my channel about split primary if you want to find that, but that class really goes in depth. If you wanted to add to those colors, I would suggest yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and maybe a sap green, which is a convenience color, but super handy to have because you mix so much of it. But that would be my pick. I mean, you're better off to start with fewer and learn how to mix color than to go crazy and get more colors and you know what to do with. Doing some lighter gray rocks here.
Johan Gockel, sorry to bother you again. You're not bothering us. That's why we're here. But do you ever use white gel pens as highlights? You guys are amazing. Keep the compliments coming. You can ask us as many questions as you want.
Actually, yes. That's something I've recently started doing, and I really like it. I haven't seen, because I've used the white gel pens in my scrapbooking and card making, and I've never seen any like adverse effects of using them.
I haven't either.
Yeah, and
I mean, I have some stuff that I used the white gel pens on several years ago. Yeah, and I haven't noticed any degradation on any of the pages or anything. Yeah,
well, I just posted a tutorial on this, and the highlights are white gel pens, and it was so much easier than saving that white that I had a ball painting, and it was so much fun. That was kind of one I was inspired by Anna Mason. I used her techniques for building layers, but I didn't save my whites. I was too impatient and lazy for that, but worked great.
Efficient, not lazy.
Very efficient. So now I'm going to go and add some shadows behind that area that I carved out, and I'm going to start with my my nice gray that I mixed here, but I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine, more ultramarine, and a little bit of phthalo blue to it, so it matches my mountain color a little bit better. And I think I'm just going to go in on the chisel edge. I don't know if it's dry enough yet. I think I might need to. Oh, I think it's dry. I just need more color in there. It's not showing up. I'm just going to go, I'm going to turn it is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to go in and just sharpen up that edge of the area that I lifted. So I can darken up this one in the back so it contrasts against the sky, but I can leave the middle layer lighter so that it contrasts against the trees. And that's part of the thing about painting, is that you have to look for and sometimes force the contrast between areas.
The Printable Craft Shop. What is the easiest thing to try for beginners? Landscapes, flowers?
I don't think any one thing's more difficult than anything else. I think you just need to find what you're going to enjoy painting, because you're going to stick with it if it's subject matter that you're enjoying. I'm going to take that same color, because you have to kind of cross-pollinate things. So if you do it to one section of an area, you've got to keep adding it to different parts so that it looks like it belongs there and it's not just something random that you've stuck in. So I'm just adding a little bit more of that shadowy color here and there. And then I think, because this is kind of like a mid-tone, it's closer to us, I want to do some washing over that with a little bit of pink, just because I need to warm that up so it comes forward. So I'm going to grab a little bit of this rose, very, very watered down. That's something else that can affect how light fast your colors are, how much water you've added to them. If you spread those pigment particles apart a lot, the light can get in there, get on all sides of it, and damage them. So and that's kind of why watercolor tends to be a little bit more fugitive, is because it's just so fragile. It's so vulnerable there on your paper without being encased in linseed oil or acrylic medium. It's just, you got the paper and the paint. That's why framing under glass is so important. Super, super faint wash, but it's going to bring our eyes closer, and the pink is going to contrast against the green of the trees and give us a little bit of separation there too. We'll do a little bit more to that, but I got to get that wash in there. Now we are going to move, I think maybe a little bit of yellow in there, actually. I think I'll do the yellow ochre so it doesn't get too crazy green or anything. A little yellow ochre here and there. It's your painting. You can add the colors you want. It's more about the value than the colors.
I believe this is Miriam. I have a lot of tempera cheat paint. Could I use it if I add it to glycerin? You could add glycerin to it, for instance.
You can, like, to let it dry on your palette. It probably is going to be a little chalky when you paint with it, more like a student grade paint, but you could definitely use it. Well, will crack probably because it has so much water in it. Tempera is a very watery paint. I'm going to mix up some more dark and go in here and add some more details to my rocks. So ultramarine blue, burnt sienna again, less water this time. If you have a hard time mixing it with your brush, if your brush is too soft and absorbent, switch to a normal synthetic brush, because it won't hold quite so much water and you'll be able to control the darkness a little bit better. And so I am just going to try to impart some texture as I'm painting. So I'm kind of dabbing.
Hindred, how can I let go of my fear of drawing?
Trace. Trace things. And then you'll get used to it. You'll get used to that motion. You'll build muscle memory, and then it will be no big deal to draw. There's nothing wrong with it.
Elizabeth Latrice. Hi, Lindsay. Is it okay to use student grade and artist grade watercolors together?
Yes.
Shreya T. I have been drawing all your colored pencil tutorials on your channel lately, and it is just so much fun. I can't believe there are so many videos I have missed.
Well, good. Yeah, I need to do some more colored pencil. I think colored pencil is something I'll do and be more kind of like chill doing, and not so much wanting to film, because it's kind of time consuming. So I just kind of do it for fun on my own time. I'm lightening up a little bit in there. I'm going to switch to that scrubby brush for that. That's a nice thing about if you have some sedimentary colors or some non-staining colors, you can go in and lighten up areas. You need to lighten up the staining colors a bit too. So let that stop you. And that's something I kind of learned well, this is something I know I'm prone to do, is to charge right in with tons of color, more than I need. And then I spend a lot of time going back in and lifting color away. So by watching that Anna Mason class, I was I was able to learn that I don't need to charge in with so much. It's less wasteful if I build up some layers. Now, I'm not going to spend 3 hours painting, one strawberry, but I will take away some of those lessons and use them so I'm a little bit more efficient in my other paintings, so I don't spend a lot of time removing paint when I could have just gone in a little bit more hastily. Not hastily. What's the opposite of hastily? Could have gone in a little bit more responsibly and not had to go back in and tweak so much. And as soon as this is dry, we can remove our masking fluid. We can't do that quite yet, so I'm thinking about our trees and what I might do to the trees to make them a little more prominent. And I think I might actually use this brush and mix up some thicker paint. And I think I'm going to start with my 2 most opaque colors on our palette today, and that would be our yellows. So if we look here, we have permanent yellow and we have yellow ochre, and they're quite opaque. Yellows are usually opaque. They're still transparent watercolors, but they're going to be the more opaque of what we have. And I think I'll grab that turquoise blue because that's also a more opaque color. So I'll make a nice thick green that way. And I can cover up and add highlights with this.
Diane in FV, I'm using Daniel Smith masking fluid in a squeeze bottle. I've also tried using a brush. I'll try the Winsor Newton. Thank you. I never thought about using masking fluid in a squeeze bottle.
Yeah, there's a couple out there that they come that way. The Molotov masking fluid pens.
Molotov cocktail.
And there's another Mask Pen, I think, is the other brand. I haven't used them because I haven't nearly come close to using up my Winsor Newton bottle, and I don't want to buy another one until I've used it up because I have a feeling they do have a shelf life, so I don't want to have like 3 going and have them get wasted because they're not cheap.
Hindred, when do you feel that the painting is done?
About 30 seconds after I kind of botch it a little bit. I usually don't know until right after. It's like, oh, I should have quit while I was ahead, or it's kind of how I roll.
It happens.
Yeah, we just need a big time machine. Big TARDIS we could hop in, go back 30 seconds.
Oh, TARDIS. Sharon Avalos. Hi, Lindsay. What brand gel pen do you use for the white highlights? Any old brand is fine? Honestly, I think the Uniball Signo has a huge advantage. I find that a lot of other gel pens dry out and will stop working, or they just skip, or they're just out of the gate not opaque enough or not reliable enough. And I never have a problem with the Uniball Signo. But I still try to use one up before I open another one. Sometimes I'll lose it and I'll have to open another one, then I find the first one, so it's not perfect, but so I'm not perfect, but I like to use that brand. It really made a big difference than just using any old kind, because so many are actually quite transparent, even though they're white. Well, and I found too with some of like the cheaper ones, like you'll get halfway through and then the gel just won't come out of the pen anymore. Mm-hmm. So you still got half a pen of white gel ink that you can't use. Yeah. And it's very frustrating, especially and it usually will dry up when you're halfway through something. Yeah. And I can't stand it when it skips and you're just trying to finish a project and you can't because the pen just won't flow and you're just waiting on it. Jelly Roll is pretty good too for colors, but I find for the white, the Uniball Signo is just tough to beat. I've had problems with the white ones and the jelly doing like drying up or running out or not flowing really nicely. And again, usually halfway through a project when you're like, really? Yeah. Yeah, I almost gave up on gel pens until I found those. And yeah, I have some of those and I like them quite a bit. They're really great. I use those. I taught a workshop at the stamp show and I actually bought a bunch of extras to bring because it was on the materials list of what people needed, but I just knew that there'll be some people that couldn't find it or didn't know there was a difference and they would need them. Just deepening up a little shadow there, waiting for my masking fluid to dry because I cannot, or waiting for my surrounding paint to dry because I cannot heat this or it'll grab on my paper and make a mess and won't be able to remove it.
If you have any more questions, just go ahead and fire them away because it's going to be a couple minutes before that's going to be dry enough. So I'm just going to putter away at those mountains for a bit.
Shreya T, are you doing more Craftsy classes?
I hope so. I'd love to. I would definitely say yes if I am given that opportunity again. So hopefully, buy my class. So buy my class if you're on the fence.
That's right.
Oh, it was so amazing. I had such a ball going up there and filming, and it's the most work I've ever put into any project is what I did for Craftsy. So it was really fun. I didn't know. I was like, oh boy, I don't know if this is worth it till I went out there and filmed, and it was just like, wow, this is awesome. Then I saw the finished product. It was so cool.
Sunday Fuller, Lindsay, I watched your video on painting the watermelon, and I was wondering how I get the second watermelon to look like it's laying down. I've tried twice now.
It's foreshortening. You need to make sure that so like your watermelon's like that, standing up. So as the watermelon's tipped away from you, see how the triangle shrinks? The triangle gets shorter. So you're looking at slice number one. Yes, you're looking at slice number one like this, and then slice number two is lying down. So you see that triangle like that. So it's foreshortening. That's you get that down, and you'll have it. So I think that's probably dry enough over here that I can start removing this masking fluid. And I could not find my rubber cement pickup this morning, which is like an eraser that helps you.
You don't have a box of those stashed in here somewhere?
I probably do. Probably under a box of something else. I don't know. Actually, you can get these really big ones at Harbor Freight, and my husband will slice out. They're meant for cleaning your grinding wheels and stuff, and my husband will slice off a chunk for me. But I've lost that and the one I've actually bought at an office supply store that's a rubber cement pickup. I prefer that because I always seem to like smudge paint when I'm doing. Say you get the paint on your finger from on top of the masking fluid, and I always seem to. I'm gonna try an eraser because I know I'm gonna get stuff on my fingers on there.
Leanne Caballo, I need help. How can you prevent the changing of the color of the watercolor painting? I'm assuming she means she goes to paint and it mixes.
Or maybe she means a shift from
maybe.
wet to dry.
Maybe.
The wetter you paint, the more shift you're going to have between how it looks wet and how it looks dry. And that's just nature of the beast. Using a better quality paint will dry less chalky. So if you're using a paint with a lot of fillers in it, like a student quality paint, like, pardon me, like maybe like the Koi set, and it looks really vibrant, but then as it dries, it gets a little chalky. Actually, I don't think the Koi's that bad. I just can't think of one that's off the top of my head that's horrible. But that's just because of the fillers. Like gouache, for instance, if you were painting with gouache and you were using it like a watercolor, you would notice it get really light as it dried. So I would recommend maybe using a little less water until you are used to how much paint you need to add to get the color to dry as dark as you want it to. Put more paint in. You make it like 3 shades darker than you think you're going to want it when you paint it to begin with. Those are great ways to kind of deal with the shift that's going to happen. And it does seem like artist quality paints don't shift as much, and it's because there's not as much filler. They might look the same on the paper wet, but as they dry, the artist quality paints dry more transparent and more true than the student quality ones. It's not a big deal. Just make sure you add more pigment while you're going. And that's part of the reason why artist quality goes further, because you don't have to use as much.
Aditi Goel, when are you going to do the leaf painting?
I have a stack of paintings, and I'll let you know my process here. So what I do when and usually Friday afternoons I have some free time, I will go and I will record 4 or 5 painting tutorials in one go, and then I upload them and I dole them out every few days after I've recorded them. But since there's so many people excited about the leaf one, that will be the next one that I post. It's not recorded yet, so I still have some more in the can that haven't been published yet, like my watercolor swatch book. I try not to do 2 tutorials back to back because people will get a little bent out of shape if they, what? You just watercolor tutorials now? You know, they'll get like all like wound up if I post 2 watercolor tutorials back to back. So, aren't you ever going to stamp again?
could just make everybody happy all the time.
What reviews? I didn't come here to watch a review. Oops, that's wet. Look at that. I just smeared it. Whoops. I'll let that dry for another minute or so. While that's drying, I can actually start painting the flowers over here. I think I got most of that off. You have to be very careful not to have any like water or sweat or any oils or anything on your hands while you're doing this, because you will smear that paint. The friction is going to, and the wetness will mar your paper and will pull up the paint underneath. So just be careful of that. All right, so I'm going to mix up some nice fresh light colors for in here. I'm going to go with a smaller brush because I don't have a lot of space to work. And
now,
I don't
Lindsay, do you want to leave your brushes sitting in the water like that?
Oh no, I do not.
I noticed a few of them have what look like wooden handles.
Very good catch. Yes, do not leave your wooden handle brushes sitting in the water because the wood will expand, your paint will crack, your ferrules will get loose. And it will not be a pleasure.
I don't want to be naggy, but they were sitting there for a few minutes, and I didn't want you to forget about them.
These you can leave in the water for quite a while. You just have to be careful that they'll be resting on their tips. That's not good for the tips, but it's not going to damage the handle. Good catch. So I got this color here, and I'm just going to add a little bit more of the permanent yellow and the phthalo green. Make sure it's nice and bright. I can't remember exactly what I had mixed underneath there. There might be a little bit more of a muddy color there. And I'm going to start going in and painting the little stems. I just want to make sure you can see that where my paper is.
Lena Din. Hey, Lindsay, when using watercolor, which one is better, more opaque or transparent?
I believe more transparent because your colors will be a lot more vibrant, and you'll see the brightness of the paper underneath, and it's just I think it just looks a lot nicer. But it's completely up to you. Like if you wanted to paint on, say, colored paper, then you'd want something more opaque, like a gouache, which is a very opaque watercolor. It's personal preference. Some brands tend to be more opaque than others, and it just depends on what you personally like. I find that children will tend to prefer more opaque paint because it's a little more forgiving when you're learning. But I think that the more transparent, the more pure, the less fillers generally, the better they are. I have very little patience with a small brush. I got to move up a size. That's not holding enough water for me. Or you could use a liner. This has very long bristles that are designed to hold more paint. This is the the Mimic Faux Squirrel. So, but I can soak up all that paint and go quite a long ways with that. Also from Jerry's Artorama.
The Spin Doctor. At least with a landscape, no spattering.
Is that a challenge?
Sounds like one. It was in all caps and an exclamation point.
Oh my goodness.
That's all I'm saying. I'm scrolling down to get caught up on the questions now.
I didn't spatter on my raspberry the other day.
That's true.
That was spatter free.
The Printable Craft Shop. Newbie question. Why do you use masking fluid?
Because on this painting, in the foreground, I had these really bold flowers that would be very impossible to paint around and still have a smooth water in the background. So if it's not easy for me to paint around an item, I will use masking fluid. I use it very sparingly because I personally I'm impatient. I don't like waiting for it to dry, and I oftentimes do not like the hard edges. But with something like this, it's kind of a necessity because it would just be too much work to paint around all of those little flowers, and it would look very fussy and unappealing. Older and Dirt.
Lindsay, I used your old skirt making video for a recent project. Are you doing any sewing lately?
Not too much, to tell you the truth. I don't sew a lot. I tend to honestly use my machine more for mending stuff for the kids than I do actually sewing things. I thought I was going to make some sundresses this summer, and I grabbed out some patterns for them and everything, but then I happened to find some really cute sundresses on sale for like $12 a piece, and I'm like, I can't make them for that. So
no,
I didn't end up sewing. So I don't have any sewing tutorials planned, actually. I get very frustrated and impatient if something doesn't come out right and I have to rip out. I hate ripping out seams. That is like the most irritating thing. Last time I sewed, I had to rip out a seam, and I can't remember what the project was, but I remember ripping out that seam, whatever. Oh, it was my scarf. It was making my scarf for the hand-stamped, hand-painted scarf.
All right, I hate to do this, but all this water I've been drinking this morning, I've got to use the bathroom. So I apologize, people. I'll be back as soon as I can. I can't hold it. I'm starting to do the pee dance in the chair.
It's quite entertaining, really. So yeah, so the other moderators can take over if anyone gets a little too crazy. And I won't be able to see your questions till she gets back. So, oops, I don't want to have anything that color. I'm gonna a little more of this permanent yellow. I really want the contrast to be high between the rocks and the water and these flowers. So that's why I am really keeping this mix light and fresh. So a lot of yellow, a lot of the phthalo green. That's why I didn't use a yellow ochre, because although that's a pretty color, when I add that in there, it's not going to be as light and bright. And I need that contrast of light and bright against the heavier rock color. The other nice thing about using the masking fluid, if you have something dark next to it, is that if I can use a lighter, a wider brush, and even if I go outside of the lines, it's that really light stuff that's going to show up. So even if I get some of this over the water, you're not really going to see that. You're only going to see the light colors, which is nice. It makes it easy. So I'll use masking fluid if I think it's going to make my life easier. But if there's any way that I can, paint around it without too much trouble, then I'll usually do that. And I need to remove some more there before I can paint over there. Got my add a little bit more green. And you need that contrast. You've got heavy, darker colors here. You need lighter colors to contrast against it, or it's just not going to look as nice. Some darker greens just here and there, just to add a little bit of contrast.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you for your patience.
Not a problem. Now I'm going to mix up some color for our flowers here, and I'm going to use the quinacridone rose and the ultramarine blue. That'll give us a beautiful violet. Kind of more on the pinky side. And we're just going to dab those on there. Oh, more water, that's too dark. So if you missed your, if you didn't have the fluid, the masking fluid, and you're at this stage, just go ahead and use these colors, but instead of adding a lot of water to them, you just add white, add the tube white. I don't recommend putting the tube white on your palette, but I would keep it in the tube. I know the set of Turner paints came with white. Just mix it in with your paint and paint it on top, in an opaque fashion, and it'll look nearly the same. So, or you could go over it with colored pencil and do this portion with colored pencil. The only reason why you might not want to do it is because it does cut down a little bit on the glow of the painting. But if you were entering a competition, a watercolor competition, that would disqualify it in some situations. So, but if you're not entering a competition, you're painting for your enjoyment and you don't care, you just want to get the look, go ahead and do it. Try it. See what you think. See if you like that technique. There's, it's not, don't be a hero just because you think using white is bad. Do what's good for your art. There's no art police that's going to knock down your door.
David Sacktheville. Hi, Lindsay. Are White Nights watercolor better than Cotman? They're more vibrant than Cotman, and they say the White Nights are an artist grade. I'm not sure. I've heard conflicting things about the light fastness on that paint brand. The company claims that they're very light fast. However, I think it was Handprint did a light fast test and they did not find that to be the case. So, just with a grain of salt. The earth tones are kind of weak in the White Nights line, but the colors themselves I find to be very vibrant and beautiful. And if you're painting for fun and you're learning how to mix colors, there's nothing wrong with them. They're not going to steer you wrong as far as learning how to paint. I just don't know if they may fade. They are brighter than the Cotmans, and they do re-wet better than the Cotmans. They seem to be a much more intense, easily liftable paint. Like you wet a paintbrush and you set it on the cakes of color and they just kind of like explode with color. So
So as far as performance, they're fantastic. As far as light fastness, according to the manufacturer, they're great. According to some people, they're not. I don't know. I've never done a test of them.
Kelly Tanner, question: do you have any tips for starting a small art business on Etsy?
There's a YouTuber. Her name is Renee Christine. She has the channel called richmombusiness.com. She also once a year does a she does a year-long course called Rich Mom University, but you can only sign up for that in March. But she has a lot of free tutorials to kind of tide you over until then if you're thinking about signing up. She's fantastic. I would check her out. Most of her advice is on Etsy shops, and she has a free course. If you go to I think it's freehandmadetraining.com, you can enroll. It's I took that actually, and it did help my craft fair sales quite a bit. It's like 3 20-minute classes, and it's really good, and it's free, and I would highly recommend that if you have an Etsy shop that you want to improve. Well, I think I'm going to call this finished. What do you think?
I think it looks great. I like the mountains. It looks almost like there's some cloud cover.
Oh, it's a little misty,
tree.
Isn't it? Oh, I should have left it. I should have scrubbed it more and just left it and made it misty.
I mean, Rich was kind of sad there weren't any splatters on it, but
oh, I know, poor Rich. He'll
have to make do.
Now I kind of want to do that though. Now I think I'm going to take that, not spatter. I mean, mist it, make it look misty. Let's make our mountains a little misty.
I thought it looked a little misty before.
I like that idea, so I'm going with it. I'm taking your idea.
It's yours.
I am taking this stencil brush and cleaning it, squeezing out the excess, and just scrubbing and making this misty. I like that idea a lot.
Moja Hendricks. Hi, Lindsay. Do you know if the Derwent Color Soft pencils are waxed or oil-based?
They are wax-based. Very opaque. I really like them. The Polychromos by Faber-Castell are oil-based. They're more transparent.
Oh, we just gave Rich some palpitations. There's no spattering today, Rich. It's okay.
There. Oh, I like the misty idea. I don't know if that looks more misty or less misty.
I think it looks a little mistier. Looks like it's coming up off the trees. Early morning mist. You're having your coffee in Italy, your espresso.
Oh, yes. Mamma mia.
I'm just saying. I could be there.
Me too.
My feet up.
Need to do a painting trip.
Painting trip
on location.
It's a business
Italy.
expense. It's for your YouTube channel. I have to go to Italy, everybody, to paint.
Or everybody can come. We could sell classes. People would have a class. We all go to Italy.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, let's go watercolor in Italy. Let us know in the comments if you think that's a good idea. Well, I think I'm going to call this finished.
Okay. I think we're caught up on questions.
Fantastic.
All right.
Great. I want to thank you all for stopping by today and painting with us. Please visit our sponsor, jerrysartorama.com. If you are in need of any of these supplies or any other artist supplies, they have great deals. They even have like a coupon if you sign up for their email newsletter. Once you go over there. It just pops up on the screen. It's hard to miss. So that's a nice way to save a little more money if your items aren't already on sale. But their low prices are just fantastic. And don't miss the Craftsy sale this weekend. 50% off everything. All their classes anyway. I don't know about their supplies, but all their classes are 50% off. And they're the best. They're fantastic. I'm glad I'm an instructor because I get to look at all the classes I want to, which is really fun. Thank you, Sarah, for helping.
No problem. Anytime. Love my Friday afternoons.
Wonderful. Don't forget to give a thumbs up before you leave, and leave a comment after the show goes off air so I'll know that you're here. I try to look back at the comments. I can only see a little bit of the chat before it disappears. So say hi so I can see who was here. It's always fun to say hello. And thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.